If true, this changes everything for the Toronto Maple Leafs as we have received a major update on Matt Murray's status heading into next season. And this update is very promising. And if Matt Murray can be the goalie he once was, this could be massive for the Leafs. And this update regarding him might shock fans out there. So stay tuned for all that on this episode of Leafs Digest. But before we do, we have a quick message from our sponsor, Fume. Are you trying to kick a bad habit to the curb? If so, you need to check out Fume. Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Fume has a lot of delicious flavors to choose from crisp mint to cinnamon hearts. They have a flavor just for you. And with flavored air, you can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that utilizes no electronics, no vapor, and no combustion. And Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be their next success story.
For a limited time, use our code DIGEST to get your free topper. It's the perfect accessory for your Fume device. Slip it onto the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. It's great for those who love to fidget, and it's reusable. Head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code DIGEST or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get your free Fume topper when you order your Journey pack today.
And thank you to Fume for sponsoring this one. Make sure to check them out. And thank you to Fume for sponsoring this video. Check them out in the pinned comment and the description as well. Now, Darius, we have a lot to go over today, specifically focused on Matt Murray. And he's been a name that has been brought up a little bit this offseason. And of course, he has some history with the Leafs. And Darius, you've been a bit of a fan of his over the past little bit on the channel. But we have a pretty big update regarding Matt Murray. Let's just dive right into it because the goaltending situation currently for the Leafs as it stands is, of course, Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz. A pretty good 1A, 1B. But if Matt Murray can put himself into this picture, he has a pretty high ceiling here, and especially given the injury history of Joseph Woll and the history of Anthony Stolarz not really playing a ton of games at the NHL level, especially starting, there could be some room here for Matt Murray to be a Toronto Maple Leafs goaltender this year, and especially given the contract situation, which we'll dive into a lot here. So let's just start with this. He said just a couple days ago, my hips haven't felt this good in a long time. The Leafs goaltender speaks on his 1-year prove-it deal in Toronto and his renewed optimism after a bilateral hip surgery. So a lot to dissect here, and there's obviously tons more information, so let's dive into a little bit more. But at the end of September of last year, the club announced Murray underwent successful hip surgery, a procedure that would keep him sidelined for a minimum of 6 to 8 months and place him on the long-term injured reserve list. The injury is just one of the several physical setbacks for Murray, a Thunder Bay native, he faced during his tenure. And now ultimately they re-signed him to a team-friendly deal, and one that I'll let you dive into in a minute here, has some stipulations in a positive way for the cap hit for the Maple Leafs because of his injury. What are your thoughts on this? He says he never felt this good, and peak Matt Murray would probably be the best goalie on the Leafs, even though I'm highly doubtful that he's actually going to be able to sustain that, but we'll see what happens.
Well, you never know what's going to happen, right? And in terms of the contract, like you mentioned, the Leafs get a bit of a break because I believe it's a different type of contract. I don't know the exact stipulations, but because he's been injured, they can kind of get out from under it, even though it's like low risk and it's league minimum and all that. So they can get out of it if he does get injured again, which is great. But hopefully he doesn't get injured and hopefully he plays really well. And that's the goal. He finally underwent that surgery. He said his hips have been bothering him since he was 20 before he won the Stanley Cups, right? So that's something to keep in mind too. And we've seen players in the past get hip surgeries and they're never the same, right? But in recent memory, we've seen players like Patrick Kane get the same hip surgeries, or maybe a little bit different depending on what's wrong with your hips, and come back and be the same player they are, barring age, of course, and that regression due to age. But I have no doubt in my mind that if he's able to stay healthy and he does truly feel good and nothing kind of hinders his play, Matt Murray can still be a really good goaltender, right? The skill is still there. He just was not able to stay healthy since he became a Leaf, since that trade with the Ottawa Senators, right? His stats have been pretty good. When he's played, he's been great. I think he has a record for the most shots stopped in a shutout effort, at least in Toronto Maple Leafs history. So there's that, or high danger chances, I believe it was, something like that. So, when he plays, he's great. Same goes for Joseph Woll. If they're able to stay healthy, when he plays, he's great. So I think that's going to be really interesting to watch for the Leafs this year, especially with Joseph Woll, because if he gets injured, will Matt Murray step in? Because the Leafs are going with a kind of they're getting away from the tandem thing and going with 3 goaltenders. So can Matt Murray make a difference this year? That's going to be interesting to watch. And I'm rooting for him. I still think that he can be a really good goaltender. He's not even that old. And if he's feeling better, sky's the limit for a goalie like this. And I know a lot of people scoff at that, but if he's feeling better, I've seen, Patrick Kane come back from hip surgery last year and put in a really good season. So I'm looking for that from Matt Murray this year.
Yeah, he's been speaking out on some podcasts. He obviously spoke to the Toronto media. He spoke to everybody, and he's really putting himself at high standards here. And he's obviously going to try to make the team this season at a training camp. He said the effort has paid off. Murray reports that his hips are healthier than they've been in a long time. Obviously, he said they haven't felt this good in a long time, and that was the goal, and that was the hope of getting the surgery done. It's starting to pay off now, and it's starting to feel really, really good. So he's giving himself some high standards to hold up to here. But you mentioned it. The contract he signed was very good and team friendly. As an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, he inked a 1-year, $875,000 deal to return to Toronto, aiming to rebound. And basically, they replaced Matt Murray with Martin Jones. Or replace Martin Jones with Matt Murray.
Yeah,
replace Martin Jones with Matt Murray, which I know some fans out there were saying, why is that? Martin Jones had an okay season. He did his job last year. But I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that they might end up, and we didn't expect Martin Jones last season to get a lot of playing time, but he ultimately did because of Wall's injury. And then, of course, Ilya Samsonov's struggles where he was put on waivers. But if it comes to a point where Wall gets injured or Stolarz isn't performing well or someone else gets injured, Matt Murray is going to be the next one up. And there's a world where one of these guys underperforms. And if Matt Murray's playing well, he might find himself into this rotation here. And it could be a time where Matt Murray steps into the number one spot. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not quite as high on Matt Murray as you are, but I do think that ultimately it was a very team-friendly contract and one that you make 10 times out of 10. And a bit of an acquisition, or I guess a signing that went under the radar during the because of all the other signings that were going down, whether that's Timothy Liljegren, whether that's Chris Tanev, all these other ones. I like it for the Leafs, even though I don't think he's going to have a huge impact. Hopefully, really, if all things go well, he doesn't have a huge impact because Stolarz and Joseph Woll have really good years. But if he is forced into it, I don't mind it.
No, and that's the plan, right? Joseph Woll is supposed to have and be the starter this year and stay healthy. That's the plan. Stolarz is to be the backup or, fight it out, right? It's not supposed to get to the point that Matt Murray is the starter, but I think he can do it, right? And I think Matt Murray's only problem is staying healthy. I truly believe that. And I think, if you look at past goals that he's let in that maybe when he was healthy or quote unquote healthy, right, were kind of stinkers. He was talking about in the podcast he was on, which was great, a great listen. There was a lot of things wrong with him. He was having ankle problems and stuff like that, a bunch of different problems that, he was healthy enough to play, but these things were bothering him. It's because of his hips. So now he's finally fixed the main issue. So I wonder if everything's going to kind of fall into alignment for him here and he's able to put together a really good season, whether it's with the Leafs or the Marlies to start, right? We'll see how that shakes out. But I think there is a world where he could end up maybe not the starter, but playing, a considerable amount of games for the Leafs this year. So it's going to be fun to watch. I'm a big fan of Matt Murray, and the podcast was a good listen. His road back from this surgery was crazy, right? Like he couldn't skate for 5 months. He couldn't do much for 5 months. He finally got back on the ice. He can't go down into the butterfly for so long. So this road back for him, he's determined to play in the NHL again, to put in good performances. So, he's driven. I'm excited to watch what he does this year. And maybe he ends up, being a little bit of a savior for the Leafs in a way, because Joseph Woll, like we know, he has to stay healthy. That's another challenge for him this year. And Stolarz does not have as much experience as the other two guys. So it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, and he's also playing to make more money. He's obviously on a prove-it minimum deal. He needs to play well and get into the NHL for that matter to get a contract that he's looking for, whether that's a more than a minimum deal or not going into the coming years. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. And also, check out Fume down below in the description and pinned comment. They've been big supporters of us. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon.